Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink programme. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, we celebrate some modern flavour heroes with author Gurdeep Loyal.
We're now sort of in a world where people are being thrown sort of flavours and TikTok content and all this stuff all the time. And what I wanted to do was to sort of ground that and go, no, let's be really present. Let's be really in the moment with flavour.
Also on the programme, we find out the secret to long-lasting success with a family-run Italian restaurant from the 60s.
The idea of Rossella and the idea of the restaurants that we've run has always been farm to table, where we get the products from our family farm in Italy and bring it over to wherever we're serving.
Plus, we meet Indonesia's star barista to talk all things coffee. All that here in The Menu on Monocle Radio. It goes without saying that flavour is a pretty important component of thinking up a recipe. Some prefer their dishes subtle and delicate, but for those who are after something punchy, there are a number of ingredients that can act as shortcuts for a satisfying result. As the way we cook evolves, these ingredients don't necessarily have to come from our backyards, but they can be picked from all over the world for mouthfuls that are a global hybrid, reflecting our way of living and travelling today. Author Gurdeep Loyal is a staunch advocate for this kind of cooking, which he has distilled in his new book, Flavour Heroes, 15 Modern Pantry Ingredients to Amplify Your Cooking. From gochujang to harissa and tamarind, these big personality ingredients are picked from far and wide and combined into inventive creations. Gurdeep joined me in the studio to tell me more.
When we're talking about flavour, we're ultimately talking about pleasure, sensation. It's very immediate. It's very present. And I think we're now sort of in a world where people are being thrown sort of flavours and TikTok content and all this stuff all the time. And what I wanted to do was to sort of ground that and go, no, let's be really present. Let's be really in the moment with flavour. So I wanted to use the word flavour, but what I wanted to do was to kind of expand what flavour is about. And one of the things I write about in the book a lot is that flavour is not just what we taste on the tongue. It's actually a combination of what we taste on the tongue, what then goes kind of retronasally up into our noses, but it's also what we see, it's also what we hear, but most importantly, it's any memory that's triggered in your mind. And so for me, opening with this wonderful quote of Virginia Woolf's from Orlando, which is all about how the simplest everyday activity, like putting the washing out, can trigger a memory from childhood, which is very linked to Proust, you know, with his Madeleine moment. And so for me, what I did with the book was I wanted to make people feel the immediate, delicious and kind of unlimited pleasure of flavour, but by getting them to stop, to slow down and to think consciously about the things that they're combining and then think about combining everything in their mind with what they're experiencing on their tongue.
I think this is really, really interesting in this idea of memory, heritage, history, reference points, because if there is one thing that all the recipes in this book are, it's just this massive global hybrid.
Yeah.
I feel like there is no recipe in here that really just belongs in one country. No. Everything, everywhere, all at once, really.
Yeah.
So I suppose in your head, how do you reconcile, I suppose, encouraging people to take a very specific approach to flavour and one that is geographically conscious, but at the same time, this sense of total globalization constantly.
Yeah. It's something I was really conscious of. I've worked in the food industry for 20 years and a lot of my jobs have been in development for big companies and kind of, you know, from luxury to supermarkets, developing products and, you know, traveling the globe and then bringing those flavours to the nation effectively. And it's something you have to do extremely responsibly. And one of the things that I talk about with the ingredients that I'm talking about is, it's interesting that sort of the word modern, I'm not in any way claiming to be bringing these new ingredients to the nation. They are extremely established in the cultures they're from. What I'm getting people to do is to have a very modern angle and perspective and reconsideration of these. And a lot of the ingredients I've kind of chosen, some of them, you know, you have to go into a diasporic store to get them. And I want that. I want people to go, well, I can't get this in a supermarket. No, but you can in a Japanese supermarket. I can't get this in, you know, in whatever my store here. But actually, if I went to a Turkish deli, I can get it. And for me, those diasporic stores around the country and actually around the world, they are the absolute fonts of knowledge when it comes to flavour and when they're almost the custodians of that culture. And I think all flavours, you know, they have cultures that they are rooted to, But in the world that we now live in, diasporas are everywhere, and ingredients in themselves, and I talk a bit about it, is that ingredients, like people, are now almost these culinary diasporic travellers themselves that morph and evolve and change. And I think food as this really sort of pliable and sort of flexible and wonderful facet of culture takes on all of these influences and changes and evolves and all these things. And actually what's incredible about these ingredients is as much as they change and they get intermixed with other things, they still remain rooted to the cultures they're from. And I think that's what I did with a lot of the recipes was I asked people to be really sort of true and appreciative of where these ingredients are from and where they're culturally rooted to and to the people that they're culturally rooted to, but also the sort of playfulness of the diaspora that are also mixing these ingredients and also bringing in my own kind of global experiences as well as a food writer.
Well, I think this really resonates with me because when you are someone who doesn't live in their home country or a first or second generation, there is an assumption that the closest you will get to the food memory, the more connected you will feel with your hometown. But very frequently people will ask me, oh, what's your favorite Italian restaurant in London? And I will infrequently say something that feels genuinely very authentic in the way that they would like for it to be.
Yes.
When we talk about food that brings up memories, I feel like there is a temptation to always kind of ape what has come before us. But I feel like in this book, it feels genuinely like a book for now and a book for the recipes that we're cooking.
Yes.
And is there a sense that we're sort of writing our own tradition now, that we don't just have to keep going over the same stuff over and over again?
No, absolutely. And one phrase I use a lot in the book is third culture cooking. And I am British Indian. My mum was born in India. My dad was born in Kenya, but I was born in England. And so for me, my food is a combination of my Britishness, my Indianness, a bit of my dad's Kenyanness, all of the global things that I've experienced, the fact that I've lived in London for over 20 years, which is this global, amalgamation of incredible cuisines. And I think for me, what I want to do is to sort of say, if I was to just cook the Indian recipes of my mum, I wouldn't be being true to myself because I am not just that. And also my mum's not just that. So it's this sort of, for me, it's this celebration of the now and the fact that I'm very proudly British and Indian and a citizen of the world. And I think my food is an expression of that. And a lot of the stories in the book are this sort of expression of a memory or a moment or a holiday or a very special dinner I've had or just something that is really important to me because it might be attached to a place in London or a restaurant, whatever it might be. And I want this to be almost sort of giving people that permission to say, well, these hybrid, combined, conjoined stories that we have right now in the present, in 2025, of lots of cultures coming together, they are as relevant and as important, and they are our current history. And in 20 years' time, it's all going to change again. And in 50 years' time, it's going to change again. And I think for me, this is very much a snapshot of the now. And the 15 ingredients I've chosen are intentionally. I think, what's really interesting is I've looked back at books that have been done about the pantry. This is not a new idea. People have been writing pantry cookbooks back since Mrs. Beeton, over 100 years, if not before that. And what's really interesting is that every single time someone does a book of the pantry, it is a snapshot of the times. And so for me, what I'm doing here is saying these 15 ingredients, I think, are a really joyful snapshot of the present. And if I was to write this book in 5 years' time, they would probably be completely different ingredients. And I sort of like that idea. It's this idea of food as this ever-evolving, dynamic, living form of culture that I think is really exciting.
I'm totally with you. I completely agree. Although I do want to go a little bit further in this exploration of why these ingredients truly are modern. Because yes, they're global and we've become very curious to all different cuisines. But especially with your sort of like trend analyst kind of a hat on, I do feel like there are some things that join the dots between these ingredients, because you have gochujang, you have nduja, you have miso. I feel like these are the flavors that we are seeing more and more on menus around the world. They're quite spicy. They're quite salty.
Yeah.
They are, we have to say, umami in many cases. But what do you think that says about our contemporary palate?
Yeah.
Why are we drawn to these types of flavours?
I think we're drawn to them because they are such powerhouses that do have this immediate sensory effect on our entire tongue, and the tongue itself is so complex. It has, a lot of taste buds are concentrated on the sides and on the front. You have a lot of taste buds underneath your tongue, which people don't know, which is why, you should always swill wine around your mouth, and also why if you ever have a piece of chocolate, the best place to try it is to let it melt underneath your tongue because you get this blooming of flavour. I think we've all become sort of very accustomed to these sort of big, loud flavours. But also we become simultaneously very appreciative, I think, of seasonality and letting ingredients absolutely shine for themselves. And I think what I wanted to do with this book was to kind of go, well, these are the pantry powerhouses that can amplify your cooking, whatever it is you're cooking, and also whatever you happen to have in your fridge. You might have nothing but a pepper and a sort of old leek. But actually, if you've got some delicious gochujang and maybe you've got some yuzu kosher or maybe some tamarind, you can make the most extraordinary thing. I also just think we are just much more well-travelled, much more curious. And also, I talked about this idea of third culture. It's not just me. There are so many diasporas coming together in so many different cities around the world that are celebrating their own cultures. And also there are heritage fusion cuisines. It's really, I think there's been this wonderful reclaiming of the word fusion by diasporic food writers around the world. And it used to be a sort of dirty word in the sort of 80s and 90s. And now there's this extraordinary fusion of it. And now there's this extraordinary explosion of it with people like Ishta Belfridge and kind of Just in the Dustbin on Instagram who are celebrating the fact that they are these hybrid people and therefore their own pantries at home are this amalgamation of all these different things. So I think that combination of us experiencing loud flavours and being okay with them, I think for a long time people were sort of a little bit shy of loud flavours and putting loud flavours with loud flavours. I take the very opposite approach. I'm all about feel and taste as much as you possibly can and connect that to memory.
That was Gurdeep Loyal speaking to me at Midori House. This is The Menu. Plenty of restaurants come and go in our cities, but often those who stay are the establishments that meaningfully serve a neighbourhood. In London's northern area of Kentish Town, Rossella is an Italian restaurant that's been running since 1960. For decades, it has stayed true to an ethos of artisanal production and an approach to sourcing that still ties it closely to southern Italy. Contributor Angelica Jobson headed to the kitchen to delve into the family's history and the restaurant's lasting appeal.
The feeling that I get while being on our family vineyard is such a strong feeling of home and community. It's almost overwhelming. I sit there and I just feel so welcome.
This is Luca Miola, founder and owner of Rossella. His family vineyard is located in Benevento, in Italy's Campania region, about an hour and a half from Mount Vesuvius.
In fact, it's my happy place. If I'm having a stressful moment and I need to think of a place to ground me, it's actually sitting around a table with about 30 Italians shouting at each other. It's a very grounding experience.
But we're not sat overlooking rolling hills and a lush vineyard. We're on Highgate Road in North London, flanked by a hairdresser and a post office. An unassuming location. And yet, the warmth of an authentic family establishment is everywhere. Copper pots and pans hang from a white brick wall. A collection of black and white photographs of the family over time on another. The vineyard isn't just an appendage to the restaurant. It brings alive, quite literally, the idea of delivering a taste of Italy to London diners.
The idea of Rossella and the idea of the restaurants that we've run has always been farm to table, where we get the products from our family farm in Italy and bring it over to wherever we're serving. We've been in the restaurant business since the 60s when we opened the first Rossella restaurant in Benevento, but we've been in the farming industry for hundreds of years. Rossella was the name of our great-great-grandmother, and that's why the first restaurant came about. People are always so happy to try a farm-to-table product and something that we produce on our vineyard.
Luca opened his Rossella in Kentish Town almost a decade and a half ago, and expanded it to include a deli in 2021. His education started at the feet of his father, who opened his own Rossella in the East London suburbs in the late 70s.
When I was young, when I wanted to spend time with my dad, I kind of had to work with my dad. It wasn't just go and see him. I would be put to work when I saw him because there would always be so much to do. My earliest memory working in the restaurant was when Pokemon cards came out. I was about 3 years old. For every 25 kilo sack of potatoes I peeled, I was allowed one packet. It took me hours, but I felt like it was really rewarding. I thought I was getting a good deal, and I guess so did my dad. As I got older, I did washing up, learned as a waiter, as a chef. I remember being 8, 9 years old and running around little glasses of water to the table with a little tray and a little glittery waistcoat. After working for my dad for so many years, I then went to study at Westminster Kingsway College, did a 3-year professional chef diploma, learned a bit more about the French fine dining side of food. The fine dining industry, it's run a little bit differently. It's really strict, really under control. And I try to bring a little bit of that aspect into my everyday restaurants. So it's a family restaurant, but with slightly better systems in the background.
My first encounter with Rossella's some years ago was out of necessity. It was a particularly hot day in North London, and I was in need of some shade and a Negroni. The Negroni turned into some bruschetta. You know when you see a dish go out to another table and you need to try it. Then a bowl of pasta. You know when an unplanned starter tastes so good you need to take a look at the menu. And some tiramisu. You see where this is going. And of course, the family wine. The waiter seemingly unsurprised at the outcome after my companion and I had insisted we were here just for a drink. So let's dig into the wine.
We produce a red wine, Agnellico, and a white wine, Flauangina. We are in Benevento, so it's still known as having volcanic soil. So it's just got amazing minerals for these two grape varieties to grow there. And everyone tends to grow the same grape varieties because they grow so well there. If you go to a family-run restaurant, you always want to try the family wine, right? We've been making this wine for about 30 to 40 years now. And throughout the time, you've just seen the evolution of the wine. It's slowly changed its flavours profiles. And also it has less sulfites that you might usually find in wine. So you have less of a headache in the morning. We started as a pig farm, apparently. And then as the times have changed, it's adapted. It went from a pig farm to a tobacco farm. So I remember being young and picking tobacco leaves, and then we used to hang them up to dry. It just slowly changed with the times. It's now a vineyard. I have memories of picking the grapes. We always had a small amount of wine, but you'd produce a bit for yourselves as you would. But it's really just adapted along the years, and it's got to a point now where we supply a couple of restaurants in the UK, mostly our own family restaurants or friends' restaurants. And then we also sell our grapes to a cooperative in Italy. This Flauangina, it's got a beautiful, deep, rich, yellow, hay kind of colour to it. Really, really zesty kind of flavours, and it goes great with fish dishes like probably our salmon or our spaghetti scoglio, which also has a bit of tomato in it, mussels, clams. I really love the resemblance of the bottle of the front there because we have a beautiful gold label which is designed like the mountain that we actually live on. So this is our Agnellico wines, this is our red wine. Well, it's quite a full-bodied, quite a bit of smoky wine, really intense fruit flavours. We love it with nice rich bolognese, something that's been cooking for a long time. The menu that we have at the restaurant is a classic menu. We do some more modern twists. For example, we have a burrata on at the moment where we serve it with grilled peaches rather than a classic tomato. So there are a few variations to it that probably my grandma wouldn't do back home. But it's not only in the food to create that experience, but it's also in the customer service.
There's also a warmth and simplicity in the decor, and I get Luca to walk me through the wall of family photos.
The largest one right in the middle is a picture of me as a little boy picking tomatoes from the farm. We have some pictures of us on our tractors here. So in this picture, you have me, my brother and my sister with our grandma in Italy, which is my mum's mum, making pasta as kids. And yeah, we're just about to go and eat that afterwards.
If you need something else after your meal, which is best finished with Rosella's own limoncello, they have made to a family recipe by friends on the Amalfi Coast. Then have a browse of the deli.
So many guests wanted to take a bottle of wine or jar of sauce home with them after their meal, and we wanted to incorporate that. We now have a load of our own products, some which we make in-house, and a lot of really nice bespoke artisan Italian produce that we manage to source. We have our own olive trees on the vineyard. We don't have loads, but we have enough to produce a great olive oil because of the volcanic soil and the minerals in the ground. The olives that are grown there are naturally a little bit more bitter. So when we produce an olive oil, we get this crazy great sharp olive oil that we really like. The chili oil that we have at Rossella, it is by far the best chili oil I've ever had because it has a kick and it has flavour rather than just burning your mouth off or just tasting like oil and not burning your mouth at all.
It's quite light.
Yeah, it's a light colour. It can be deceptive. It packs a punch.
Like their chili oil, which you should have liberally on any pizza, the Rossella experience is beautifully balanced and packs an authentic punch. A farm-to-table delight where you get to be part of a big Italian family.
Angelica Jobson with that report. You're listening to The Menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's Henry King.
An expert review in the United Kingdom has concluded that plant-based milks are not nutritionally equivalent to cow's milk. Dairy alternatives have rapidly increased in popularity in recent years, partly through growing environmental and ethical concerns. But experts warn that the lower micronutrient content in vegan versions could be harmful. Perhaps something to consider when you're next ordering an oat flat white. A restaurant in the city of Shanxi in China has gone viral online, not for food, but for the animal experience that comes with it. Customers are able to order a 4-course afternoon tea, which in a perhaps untraditional approach, comes with a side of lion cub cuddling. Llamas are also available, in case you're wondering. Not surprisingly, the restaurant has been met with a considerable number of complaints to the local authorities over animal welfare concerns. And back to the UK, where soy sauce brand Amoy is looking for a chief eats officer. The job description cites the company is looking for someone with a big appetite and a passion to follow their taste buds around the world. The chosen individual would get up to an 18-night stay, accompanied by an £1,000 allowance to try out the very best of Asian cuisine. All the company asks for in return is for the individual to content create their way around the trip. That's all for this week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Chiara.
Thanks, Henry. You're listening to The Menu. Indonesia is a huge player in the coffee world when it comes to bean production, but its cafes and baristas are less well known internationally. Mikael Jasin is one of its brightest stars. He has won plenty of international titles, including the 2024 World Barista Championships, and has been crowned Indonesian Barista Champion 3 times. He is also the founder of Oma Cafe, a cafe in Indonesia with a particularly creative approach to making a delicious cup of joe, and he runs coffee-specific consulting agency SSG Coffee Company, as well as exporting beans via his Katur Coffee Company. Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi spoke with him at his cafe Oma Cafe about his wide-ranging career, his philosophy as a barista, as well as Indonesian coffee culture.
My name is Mikael. I'm from Indonesia, and this year I'm the current World Barista Champion, but I won it last year in 2024.
So, what do you do now? This is amazing cafe. So, tell me more about your activities.
We started here in November 2023. And then the idea was that to have a retail-facing business to complete my business ecosystem. Because my other businesses are B2B. And then there's an export company that deals with Indonesian coffee, exporting it to the rest of the world. And then also I have a consulting company working with coffee brands, coffee machines, syrups, milk, things like that. Also, we want to add value to the industry. And I think having this is that value. We can interact with our customers differently. We can create drinks with ingredients that you don't normally find in coffee. And it really, from our side, it allows us to be super creative. From the customer side, it allows them to also experience things that are not normally in cafe. So that's why we have this Oma Cafe.
Why did you get interested in this kind of more creative style of coffee? Or
I think the creative style comes from maybe competing. Because as barista competitor, especially world barista competitor, or in like the national level barista competitor, you have to make signature beverage, right? And then the signature beverage in coffee competitions are very coffee dominant. It's not like creating a drink for a cafe where the purpose is a bit different. Like making drinks for regular cafes, it's what is really what the customers like. So you follow trend, you follow, if you're in a market where they like really sweet stuff, you put more sugar, kind of like that. Whereas in coffee competition, it's quite specific, the way it's scored, the way it's written in the rules. So you do end up exploring different styles of coffee and ingredients. I think that's when it started. And I was interested in other food and beverages industry. So food, whiskey, wine, beer, and try to learn how they do what they do and why they do what they do. And then try to implement that in coffee. Initially, it was more like, I need to find a competitive advantage for competition. But then I realized, there's actually so much to learn from these industries who've been around for a really long time. Like I think coffee industry or coffee in general, even though it's been traded for hundreds of years, the cafe culture itself is still very new, right? Compared to like in Japan, sake, how people have been making sake for thousands of years, right? So, and coffee, it's still very, very new. So there's so many things that we can learn, how to ferment, how to age things through industries like that, sake or wine or beer. I guess that's how creativity started.
It's interesting that you also learn from other industry like sake and wine. What have you learned from these different fields?
Well, one, there are a lot of similarities in the way we approach the product, some, but also more similarities in how we explain the product. Things like tasting notes and flavor wheels. It's very similar, right? You explain basically taste balance, acidity, sweetness, bitterness, umami, tactile. And in the space of beverage, whatever you drink, you can explain it that way. With the product itself, I definitely learn more on the processing side, like different style of fermentation. So you definitely have to learn all these other things, but then translate it into coffee, because no other beverage industry still have to roast, grind, brew that product. Like with wine after fermentation, or with sake after fermentation, you might want to age it. After aging, you put it in a bottle. So what the winemaker or the sake master design and intend it to be, the customer get it as it is, right? Because it's bottled, open the bottle, pour it. With coffee, whatever the farmer or the processor process, there's still so many steps until it becomes liquid, right? I guess the more you know, the more you can, or I guess the wider your horizon of knowledge is, and then you use that to translate that into coffee, which is still a challenge, I think, because we don't have a sort of similar industry that we can learn from.
Thank you. So, could you explain more about what Barista Championship is like?
Well, World Barista Championship is basically a competition, a world competition to find somebody who can be the brand ambassador for specialty coffee. World Barista Championship is 15 minutes of presentation. It's the longest presentation format. So even though people can drink the coffees, they can at least hear, watch, see what the competitors are talking about. So not only your coffee has to be good, but you need to be able to explain it well and accurately.
To explain, you should have more like knowledge.
Yep.
Oh.
And I think that's why learning from other industry makes a lot of sense, because if you see, say, the wine competition, it's not exactly the same, but they guess where the wine comes from and how it tastes, and even they tell you what the aroma is, what the aftertaste, what the mouthfeel is, and the tasting notes. So yeah, for you to be able to explain your coffee accurately, then you also need to taste a lot of different things, right? And that's why I think it's very hard to do well if you just learn within coffee itself. You got to learn other things as well.
So, like, what do you think about the advantage of Indonesian barista? Indonesia is kind of not just importing, right? It's a large export country. So, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's pretty unique. In terms of the industry, it's unique because, as you said, we mainly produce coffee, but we also import coffee. And for a producing country, we're actually very relaxed in the importing regulations. Indonesia is, you can still get imported coffee that's cheaper than Indonesian coffee in Indonesia. So it makes it unique because then the retail industry, the cafes, have options of using Indonesian coffee or imported coffees, which when you talk about the baristas and the customers are exposed to different types of coffee. I see sometimes when I travel to producing country who have very strict importing license, the baristas and the customers don't really know what's out there because all they know is their own coffee, right? Which is great because it protects the industry, but it doesn't give you a wider view of what's actually out there. So it's always pros and cons, but Indonesia, we get, like the baristas get to taste all these different coffees.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you more philosophical question. How do you define a good cup of coffee?
Well, it's really funny. People always think about quality when we talk about good coffee. But oftentimes, good coffee for me is depending on other things surrounding that moment when I drink that coffee. Meaning, I've had really, really bad, expensive coffees because of the way it's prepared or the way it's roasted, the environment maybe like it's just too busy, too noisy, things like that. I've had really cheap coffee that tastes really, really good because of the environment I brew it. You know, like maybe I'm at the farm or I'm in nature. Normally, coffee tastes better in nature, or when you're surrounded by people who you love or you like. So good coffee is more about that to me. It's not necessarily how expensive it is, how high the cupping score is, but it's more about the moment that comes with it. So it could be anything, really.
So barista can be a person like designing this environment and
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely part of it. Baristas, I think also the fascination with baristas is also that, right? They are the last hands that give that coffee to the customer, and they're the one who, if they can, control the environment, control the temperature, control the lighting and the music. And it started because I love how it can connect community. This is when I first started. Like I've always feel like, at least from a customer perspective, the baristas always having fun, and obviously because normally baristas are young, right? Like early 20s, mid 20s, and then the people who go and drink coffee are just literally everybody. It's very different to visiting a specific type of office or a specific type of place. With coffee, everybody drinks coffee. So it started like that, but eventually I realized that it has this really amazing power. I always say it's an agent of change. So it's got this power to change lives, from as simple as waking you up in the morning, all the way to, if you're a farmer, your livelihood literally depends on coffee, right? So, and if you have a good harvest or your coffee is used to win a World Barista Championship, then your life will change, because then now people want to buy your coffee, things like that. For me, my life has changed because of coffee. So it has this really amazing power, and I don't know if I know anything else that is that powerful. I'm definitely biased. But I always wonder, if I'm not in coffee, what do I do? Like if coffee goes extinct tomorrow, what do I do, right? I can't think of anything that is that powerful yet.
Thanks, Ryuma. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's a midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show Food Neighborhoods for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This program was produced by Monica Lillis and our sound engineer was Flynn Simons. Thanks for listening, and until next week.